Well, by way of introductions, I have two friends with me from the community. I have Liz Rice, the Chief Open Source Officer of Cisco at Isovalent.
Isovalent
at Cisco, correction. And Katie Gamanji from Apple, and Senior Field Engineer.
That's right. Hello, everyone.
Well, thank you both for coming with me today on stage. And, I'm that individual when big events or milestones come up. I'm always that one that likes to dig into that digital photo album, which means the Wayback Machine, YouTube. And I was at this event, the Kubernetes launch, and I think my brain was so into Kubernetes at that time, I wasn't really paying attention to some of those initial talks, but there was some seeds of foundation that were happening there that really were the foundational principles for the CNCF over this next 10 years. And the first talk was by Craig McLuckie. And what was interesting at that was he was really kind of giving the backstory about why they were giving Kubernetes and what it needed. And he talked about there was a need for a foundation. And the goal was that they wanted to move everything to cloud native computing. And that it would really be about not just a few big players, but it'd be the whole industry. And this foundation would really focus on a harmonized set of technologies, providing reference architectures, looking for interoperability, and hopefully to fill gaps that may be in this ecosystem and really create a safe space for the industry to be able to engage in. The following talk then was when Jim Zemlin came out, and I think here was really some of the real guidelines that were needed that were going to be helpful to be able to help this foundation to grow. With these foundations, there's important things such as governance, membership. What are the ecosystem, development going to look like, as well as the more pragmatic things of intellectual property management. And this is when he introduced the foundation. I don't remember ever seeing this slide at that moment in time, but there it was. Amazing to see that was the origin. And so when I was talking to both of you, and we were kind of looking at this, I was really impressed that you both kind of mentioned someone that I think we can't overlook, and I want to start there, and that's Dan Kahn. Many of you have benefited from the Dan Kahn Scholarship. Over 7,000 millions of dollars have been donated to this diversity scholarship. But I want to talk individually about the impact he had on both of you. Maybe we'll start with you, Katie.
Absolutely. This is a wonderful way to start this panel as well. Now, when I'm looking back into my career, I can definitely identify some of those pivotal moments where I had people encouraging me to step up and grow. And Dan was one of those persons for me as well. I do remember when he approached me during Kubernetes forums, when we still had them, and it was in Sydney, and he approached me and encouraged me to be part of the TOC. And this was even before I knew what the TOC was doing or how important governance is for a successful open source ecosystem. Fast forward many years later, I'm still part of the community, and I'm still here. And talking about the scholarships as well, my first KubeCon, which was in 2018, I actually went there on a scholarship as well. And I knew about Kubernetes, I knew about the project, some of the projects in the ecosystem, but I didn't know about this community around it. And it's one of the most welcoming communities that is out there. And I definitely would definitely like to thank Dan for encouraging me to be part of this community and taking leadership roles as part of this community as well.
Yeah, I really relate to the opportunities that Dan gave to you and to me as well. 2018 was the year that he had invited me to be a program co-chair, one of the role that you're now in. And following that year, I felt like I'd learned quite a lot about the projects. And Dan kind of gave me the confidence and get over the imposter syndrome to think, yeah, I could stand for the TOC. And then I ended up being on the TOC for 3 years. So Dan was a huge influence on my career.
Yeah.
I also just want to say, welcome everyone to London. This is my home city, so you're very welcome here.
So now, really looking back now and kind of looking at what's happened over this last 10 years, there's some highlights of some key milestones, but there's a lot there. And I really kind of want to see that from both of your perspective, what do you consider some of the things that were turning points for the CNCF over this last decade?
So this is something that I'm actually talking quite a lot about. And one of the pivotal moments within our ecosystem was the emergence of interfaces, when we created these interfaces for runtime and networking components. Now, what it actually did is introduce standardization within our ecosystem, but at the same time embrace the interoperability principle, which means that we embrace multiple solutions for the same problem space. Now, this translates to innovation for the vendor community because they will be able to build on top of the existing integrations and plugins, whilst for the end-user community, this translates into extensibility because you have multiple tools you'll be able to choose from and benchmark and actually choose the tool that fits your pre-existing platform requirements.
I think for me, if I look back to the sort of 10 years of history, if you remember at the beginning of that, it wasn't obvious who was going to win the orchestrator wars. We had several different options for orchestrating containerized applications. And I think Kubernetes came out as the standard, really, because of the foundation and because of the vendor neutrality that meant this project could be adopted by lots of different cloud providers and lots of different end users, and everyone having the sort of confidence that a neutral foundation can give to an open source project.
Yeah, no, I think as well, and even just before the CNCF started, we already saw like the need for specification when we talked about that, like OCI, for example, and really trying to drive so that we could have alignment. And you're right, Liz, I think in that time between like 2015, 2016, I felt like there was some new scheduler coming out and we were just kind of going back and forth. I think even in one role I had, I chose Kubernetes over something else and I lost my job because I chose the wrong scheduling in their opinion, but I'm glad I chose this one. But amazingly though, we did see that there was a lot of things in that, and I think some of the other things that I think were impactful is even like the governance and like seeing some of the changes that happened. The TOC played a key part, and even when it added members, all of a sudden, exponentially, we saw project growth start to happen. So many things that really were helpful here, but not everything was easy. There were some challenges there as well. Some things, whether it's technical, organizational, even community related. And so how did the CNCF maybe overcome it? Is there something we can learn from these things?
I think one of the really important things that, again, was intentional right from the beginning was this idea that you referred to of not having a single opinionated solution, but having components that can interoperate with each other. And there is no single solution to solve everybody's problems. Everybody needs this kind of composable architectures. So the downside of that is we now have the landscape that's pretty difficult to navigate because there are a lot of choices. But the good thing is there is probably a project out there to solve or get very close to solving the problems that end users are encountering as they deploy their environments.
Yeah, and I was also thinking of one other example. Like we look at kind of like what OpenTelemetry today is. It started from 2 projects. At both we're having some, like having them both align on specs, but eventually getting them to agree and getting to form. Like look at how that exponentially went up. But it was challenging at that time. It took some time for that to develop, and now we're here again at this point where it's about ready to graduate, and so we get the benefit. End users get the benefit as well. So as we look forward and look at kind of like how this community is growing, what do you see as the most potential over this next decade for like the CNCF project adoption to be more accessible and inclusive?
Now, this is an area that we have been exploring quite a lot within the TOC as well. And we're actually taking a different approach. Instead of looking for trends, we're actually looking for gaps within our ecosystem that we'd like to surface to the community and hopefully see more contributions to or innovation within that area as well. And I'm going to mention 3 main domains that we would like to at least showcase with our community. Now, in terms of the potential for the growth within our ecosystem, we're looking into multi-cluster management and observability. This is still a challenge, especially if you have a cross-provider strategy and if you have to individually configure and scale these clusters and also surface observability across a cross-provider strategy. The second domain we'd like to highlight is around cost spending and sustainability. As we have an increased adoption of cloud-native architecture, we also have an increased focus on cost spending as well. Now, we are equally responsible for managing our cost, but at the same time, our carbon footprint, and we're looking to have more collaboration between these 2 groups within our ecosystem. And the final gap that I would like to mention here is around tooling, around infrastructure provisioning and secret management. This has been a gap within our ecosystem for a long time, and we'd like to surface it again to see more innovation and contributions to this space.
I think that the end user community, as it's grown, is able to give us so much feedback and so much information about what those gaps are, what things are working, what things aren't working, not just to the projects, but also to the vendors and to each other to understand how to build systems that work. So I'm really excited about increased involvement from end users and building things like reference architectures and the end user technology radar reports. It's really important.
As an end user technical advisory board member, I 100% agree. Those are two great artifacts if you have not taken a look at them. Adobe, we have put something up there, a few other companies as well, and we're really trying to help kind of guide and taking some of the building blocks and creating solutions that really work for your environments. And so with that, like, what guidance would you provide projects that are applying, trying to get into like that CNCF development stages?
Well, again, within the TUC, this is area that we've been focusing quite a lot in the latest years. We try to streamline our processes around sandbox inclusion and project moving levels to incubation and graduation. And as part of this effort, we are aiming to be as declarative as possible and provide clear guidance for the projects and maintainers to navigate the ecosystem all the way to the maximum maturity level possible. So if you'd like to apply or be a project within CNCF, I definitely encourage you to check our TUC repository. It has a wealth of information. And look at our backlog, it's publicly available. We also have our ongoing work that you can check, but more importantly, you can look at our closed issues, which are successful case studies of how we completed previous due diligence around incubation and graduation projects, sandbox inclusion, health assessment issues, or any kind of topic that was brought to us, to the TUC to oversee. And another thing I'd like to mention is if you find any of the criteria that is not declarative enough or not clear enough, or if you found a gap that we haven't covered within our evaluation, open an issue on the TUC repository so we'll be able to address it accordingly.
I would say before you even check out those processes, you need to be really intentional about why you're donating a project in the first place. If you think that just putting a project into the CNCF is going to magically provide you with contributors and users and an adoption community, it's not. The CNCF can amplify the work that you put in, but you have to put in work as a project. I would also say that a lot of projects come from vendors, and that's totally fine, that's exactly right. But as you contribute your project, you have to be sure that the interests of your business and the interests of the project are aligned. If they're not, it's not going to be successful. So really think carefully about the future of your project and how that's going to impact your users, how you're going to build the community around that project, and how that's going to hopefully positively impact your business. But don't just expect that magic will happen just because you joined the CNCF.
Yeah. Well, I want to focus on one last thing, and that's really, probably, I think, one of the most impactful things, and that's the community. And the CNCF has grown rapidly in memberships, and that takes a lot of resource, to be able to sustain these things. This also means that we need to have maintainers and make sure that they stay in a healthy state. So, what do you think is needed to help us to keep thriving here?
Sustainability of our community is something that I'm focusing quite a lot and speaking quite a lot about, because the technology is the gravitational point of our ecosystem. However, none of it would be possible without the people around it. So it's very important for us to scale as a community at the same pace with technology evolution as well. And as part of this goal, within the TUC, again, we have multiple initiatives aiming to help us grow as a community as well. And one of the initiatives I'd like to mention is called the Tag Reboot, which aims to revise or restructure the current tags and set up for success for the next decade of cloud native. Some of the work that we're doing here is to reduce the amount of tags from 8 to 5, and we're also introducing the notion of community groups, sub-projects, and initiatives. We aim to have a greater focus and actually more closer collaboration with the tags and the projects within the ecosystem. And the last thing I'm going to mention is do check the issue 1527. I know it by heart by now, but it's a good issue which has a lot of discussion around this topic. And more importantly, after KubeCon, we're going to open the elections for the new tag chairs and leads. So check out the issue, check all of the discussions around it, and if you identify that any of your expertise aligns with the new tags that we're going to bring up, do apply, do self-nominate, and nominate someone else from your peer. Going back to Dan Koch, be someone who is enabling someone within your community. So that's some action items for you after KubeCon.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage people to look for roles where they can bring their expertise and learn. You can gain an awful lot by contributing time into things like the tags or contributing to projects. So there's tons of opportunities. Talk to your managers about how great an opportunity that's going to be for your career. I think the other really important thing that we all need to bear in mind as a community is this is a successful ecosystem because it balances what projects need, what individual maintainers need, what vendors need, what end users need. And we need to be kind of conscious of all of these different stakeholders, bit of a jargony word, but everyone has a role to play in this ecosystem, and we need to keep that perfect balance.
Yeah. So I think this has been incredible to hear both of you. I made a reference here to Sarah Novotny. If you've not seen this talk from 2017, she provided an architecture for community that is very critical. I really want to just say thank all of you for all your contributions for this great 10 years. Let's keep driving forward with innovation, and let's have a happy C10CF. Have a great KubeCon Cloud Native Con. Thank you.